Hello, and welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett. And if you watched my episode a few weeks ago, I talked about the challenges, let's say, that I had with my insurance. And one of the things I talked about was my bathroom shower, my master bathroom shower had a pretty significant leak. It was leaking down into my garage. And so watch that episode if you want the full story on my conversation with my insurance agent about that. But bottom line was, what it led to is, well, I had to replace my bathroom shower, which was all tile. And since we were doing a new shower pan and all that, it kind of evolved into a full bathroom remodel. And, you kind of figure, well, hey, I'm already having to tear all the tile and shower out. We might as well freshen up the bathroom while we're at it. And I'll tell you, I don't have the final bill yet at the time of this recording, but it's going to be more expensive than I was hoping, as all renovation projects end up being. If you've done any sort of home improvement, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Having a budget sometimes is like it's a nice goal, but I don't know that we typically come in at budget on most home renovation projects. But this really made me think about a topic that I get asked about often, and something that I've actually really considered when I'm looking at selling a home, which is, does it make sense to do home improvements to your home before you sell it? And, this is a little bit of a complicated thing to just answer very simply. So I'm going to just give you my opinion. Now, I will start off this conversation by saying that I would personally and have sought the advice of a really good real estate agent to help me make this decision. So if you know that you're going to be selling your home and there's certain areas of your home that you think need improvement, I would talk to a real estate agent and say, do you think that making these improvements would pay off in the long run? I mean, is the expense of doing this upgrade, maybe it's a new kitchen, maybe it's a new bathroom, is that going to get me back the money that I invested in it? Now, I'm going to tell you the short answer is probably not. And I'll go into kind of my thought behind that. But to me, this is no different than putting new wheels and tires and a lift kit on a pickup truck and then thinking that you're going to sell it and get your money back. I mean, chances are you're probably not. Now, obviously, there is circumstances where it makes sense. I've flipped a lot of homes, so I've gone into homes that are very, in very bad disrepair, purchased them at a significant discount because of their condition, and then gone in and done the upgrades, invested the money, and then sold that home and made a profit. Now, the difference here is that these homes are typically in pretty bad disrepair, meaning I've purchased homes that are just filled with garbage. I mean, people abandoned these homes for whatever the reason might be. It might have been a foreclosure situation. And to me, that's a very different state to acquire a home in than something that just needs some updating. And I think a lot of people will look at their kitchen, their bathroom, and they'll say, it's kind of dated. The home was built in the 90s. Maybe it was built in the 80s, whatever the case may be. And you go, gosh, this is just not that appealing versus the stuff that I see on, Pinterest or something. I really should spend the money to upgrade this before we sell it so we can get top dollar. And I would say if you have a functional home, if there's nothing wrong with the home, just simply doing cosmetic improvements to the home in most cases is not going to get you the money back out of it that you invested. And the reason for that is because when you think about a home that's in disrepair, maybe even a home that's unfinanceable. Some of the homes I've purchased, you could not have financed them because of their condition. So I've had to go in with hard money or with cash offers, and you can get a really good deal. And that's a great starting point to do a full renovation because you're purchasing it well below market value. You're making these improvements. Now you're going to get the top end of market value, and that's great. But for a home that's already in good working condition, you got to think about how a home is appraised, right? It's mostly based on location and square footage. So when they do comparable sales, yeah, they make adjustments to the value of the home based on the quality of construction and the condition of the home, but they're pretty minor in comparison to the adjustments that are made based on the size of the lot, the size of the square footage of the home, etc. And so on a grid, if I'm just looking at an appraisal, a home that's a little bit dated versus one that looks really spectacular, they're not really going to compare that much differently. So really what we're talking about is the borrower or the potential buyer, how much are they going to like your home? So let's talk about circumstances where this is important and when it's not important. I mean, if you look at the last few years and how low inventory has been, if we're in a very low inventory market, say a real seller's market like we have been, I'm going to say it definitely doesn't make sense to do these large upgrades, specifically kitchens and bathrooms that are very expensive in today's day and age. Not only are they expensive, it's hard to find contractors to get these done in a timely manner. So I think you're going to spend more money than you're going to ultimately get out of it when you go to resale. Now, things that I would look at improving regardless, which I think are just inexpensive to do, things like your curb appeal. Like, I think going through and getting your flower beds dialed in, this is very cheap to do. Maybe putting beauty bark or some sort of mulch down in your flower beds instead of having weeds everywhere. I think pressure washing the home, the sidewalks, the driveway, cleaning the roof, so that it's in very good, looking good. I would clean my gutters, my windows, things like that, things that really improve the curb appeal. If there's garbage around and junk and stuff that's not going to be sold with the home, I'd get that stuff removed before I ever listed the home. It's going to look better in pictures. It's going to show better to potential buyers. So those are the sort of things that I would spend my money on. And don't get me wrong, it's not going to be free. It's not even going to be probably cheap. Some of these things, if you're going to hire professionals, still cost a decent amount of money, but they're really going to make it so when a person pulls up to the home, they go, okay, this place looks pretty nice. When they see the photos online, they're going to be like, okay, this looks pretty nice. Also, keep in mind that a lot of people, if they're going to do and live in a home for a long period of time, they don't mind doing some of those improvements to kitchens and bathrooms themselves over time. They may have even planned on purchasing a home a little less expensive so that they could make it their own. They can customize it the way that they want. And so you really have to do the math when it comes to kitchens, bathrooms, things like new flooring. Do the math, see if it financially makes sense. Seek the advice of a real estate professional and then do the math. Now, here's a few other areas that people maybe don't think about as much when it comes to improvements to sell. And these are becoming more and more important to today's home buyers, in my opinion. And that is efficiency, right? People want homes that are efficient. So things that you might want to consider as less expensive improvements than kitchens and baths are things like energy efficiency when it comes to your heating and air conditioning situation. If you have a very old furnace, maybe it's electric, but you have some other means, that you could look at adding a heat pump or a mini split to certain spaces might be a good thing to consider. I would, adding insulation, into your attic. This isn't a really expensive thing to do. It will cost some money, but if you have an older home with that black, nasty kind of, insulation that's been all matted down and it's not very efficient, having someone come in and suck that out and put in some of the nice, fluffy, really good R-rated, high R rating insulation can make a big difference, because when first-time home buyers look at a home, they're going to look at things like that. They're going to look at, okay, this is my first house. I'm getting into, what's my PUD bill going to be? What's my heating and cost going to be? And honestly, I think a lot of millennials and younger borrowers are very conscientious about, efficiency in general and how it is, do we have eco-friendly appliances and things of that nature. It's a real thing for a lot of people. They're going to consider that. So these are things where people don't think about, But when I'm buying a home, I would be looking at those things. How old is the furnace? How efficient is it? I've had people ask me for copies of PUD bills, right? Not a bad idea when you're shopping for a new home to ask for the utility bills for the past 6 months. Just get a sense of what's it going to cost me to live in this home. And you guys, there's a big difference between having good windows. That's another one, right? Windows, good insulated windows versus old, metal framed, double pane or even single pane windows make a big difference to that first time home buyer and what their cost of living in that home is going to be. So these are all areas that if you're a seller, you should really take inventory of and think about. But I wouldn't assume that, and because I've heard the old adage, right? Oh, well, just freshen up the kitchen, freshen up the bathroom. You're gonna make an extra 100,000. You're gonna double your money. Well, it might cost you 100,000, to do those improvements. So is it worth it? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've even been in situations where I bought a home that I was gonna flip, and after investing all this money and doing all the things, spending a couple $100,000 on a remodel, I'm like, gosh, maybe I should have just painted it, cleaned it up, done the flower beds, put a new roof on it and sold it. Maybe I should have invested 50,000 instead of 300,000. I probably would have came out pretty close to the same without all the heartache. And so these are things you learn over time. But I think it's a relevant conversation because we're getting into a season here where I expect to see more inventory coming online. And so if we get into an environment, a home buying environment where there are more listings and there is more competition, and people are going to want to think about, how do I separate from the competition of other homes that are on the market? And people will go straight to, well, maybe I need to make some improvements in order to catch the eye of those buyers out there. And I would caution you about just committing straight away to bathrooms, kitchens, the really expensive stuff. Yeah, it's the big ticket items, but it's also really expensive. And maybe think more about other things that you can do to increase your curb appeal without having to spend all of that money. And honestly, there's little things that you can do in kitchens and bathrooms besides gutting the whole thing and starting over from scratch. And one last thing that I'll mention on this topic is once you start digging into a project like a bathroom, this happened in my case in particular, right? I knew that something was leaking from my ceiling. And as I started taking apart the shower pan, you realize there was water infiltration in multiple other areas. I also realized that once I pulled up the bathtub and to put a new one in its place, well, I couldn't find a bathtub that had the same drain and the same, place where the water came up through the floor. So all my plumbing had to be completely redone and restructured, not something that I had considered doing. The shower heads had to be replumbed, things like that. That just wasn't an expense that I was thinking I would need. All had to be redone. So my point here is that sometimes what you think is a small remodel project can snowball into a much larger project over time. And you might also think about, if you improve this bathroom or this kitchen, we think about those as these standalone rooms where it's like, man, if I just had a beautiful kitchen, like that would make a big difference in my home. But you do have to think about the overall flow of the home. If all of a sudden you update your kitchen to be very modern, but the rest of the home isn't as modern, different electrical outlets, different lighting, all these things, it's going to have kind of a weird feel to your home. Someone might actually appreciate the character of the older style home, and they'll find their own ways of improving that over time. So all things to consider. I would just say the short answer is it doesn't always make sense to invest heavily in remodel projects right before you sell your home. Get the advice of a professional and think through some of the other areas of improvement that you can do to increase your curb appeal, increase the efficiency of the home that you're putting into the market, and definitely consider the market conditions. How long are homes staying on the market? How many listings are in your area, what is the competition, and let the market conditions help drive your decision on if that investment makes sense. So I hope, if nothing else, this was a thought-provoking exercise for those of you that might be in the market to sell your home and trying to decide what to do about home improvements. I hope this gave you some food for thought. But at the end of the day, reach out to a really good contractor, get more than one estimate on what the cost is going to be, and talk to a real estate professional before you make any final decisions on what you're going to do, so that you know exactly, not exactly, but a very good idea of what the impact to the bottom line of these improvements is going to be before you make that decision and invest your hard-earned dollars in something that may or may not yield the return that you were hoping at the closing table. So I hope that was helpful. I appreciate you guys tuning in every week to Market Shares. If you enjoy this content, let someone else know about it. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We do launch a new episode every single Friday. We have some great conversations, some great interviews, and some additional market updates coming to you in the near future. Keep watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.